I'm Aleksander.
My name is Aleksander.
And I'm Andy.
Welcome to Smoker's Lounge. How's it going, gentlemen? How are you?
Doing well, man. Thank you.
Not bad at all.
Not bad,
What about
not
yourself?
bad. Not too bad, not too bad. At first I thought we'd, kind of introduce ourselves. So, Andy, since you're the CEO of this enterprise, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
As you know, I'm from New Zealand. I was born there. I've had a pretty multicultural upbringing. My family has come from a distant part of the world, Greece on my dad's side, Germany on my grandmother, so my dad's mum side. My mum, on the other hand, she's from New Zealand as well. She was born there, but her father's Colombian. She grew up in Colombia, met my dad at uni when she moved back to New Zealand. My dad actually was born in England, in Bath. He actually moved to New Zealand after living 3 years in Fiji because of my grandfather's work there.
Sorry, what was your grandfather's work exactly?
So, it's a good question, actually. I'm not entirely, don't entirely remember, but I think he was working in an academic role. He had moved from Greece at a young age, at 18 actually, to London, I think, England, Brighton actually, sorry. And he essentially just went out of his way to make a life for himself, met my grandmother along the way. She had moved from Germany. And they all moved to New Zealand. I was born in the small town of Palmerston North, which is where my father's father and mother moved when they went from Fiji to New Zealand.
Right.
So I'm a New Zealander at heart, but I like to identify as a Greek New Zealander, just because I speak the language. My father's job meant that we had to move around a lot.
Right.
So I speak a lot of languages. Well, not a lot, sorry, but a decent amount. I speak French and Greek. I speak a little bit of Spanish from my Colombian side. But yeah, this whole thing for me, the Black Sheep idea, the website, everything really started just because I was bored. I was living my gap year in 2017 in New Zealand. I'd come back. The first 2 months had been a bit tough, finishing school, not knowing really what my purpose was.
Right.
Not really having a system in place, a routine. The classroom wasn't there anymore. The teachers, the friends that I'd grown up with for 2 years had all gone off to uni. And so I thought, I got to do something, something meaningful, something that will give me something to do. And so I started a basic blog called Black Sheep Weekly. The name itself came to me a bit later, but I started that just because it was something of interest to me.
So what was this blog for exactly when you first started it?
That's a really good question, actually, because at the time I didn't really know. I wanted to do something that gave me, something to do. And I wanted to basically find myself in a way, but also do something practical. I knew that I was coming to London in a year. I'd got into third entry at King's College, and basically wanted to do something that was somewhat investigative, looking at the world, observing the world, and writing about it, writing my opinions, putting them out there.
You're very much interested in politics, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's actually what I'm studying right now at King's College.
Wow, good for you.
Thanks. Yeah. It was the blog really was just about looking at that in a political sense, but it became something a bit more than that.
What else did it become for you?
Like what you were saying, it was a bit of a diary. I started to write about things that I became inspired by in the moment. Sometimes I would be at a cafe and I'd start having a bit of inspiration, a thought, and I'd start to write it down, and then I'd upload it. Sometimes I just had I would just recall a dream that I would have, or I wrote one on my sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis? What exactly is sleep paralysis for those of us that don't know?
Well, sleep paralysis is quite interesting, really. I didn't know what it was until some random guy randomly told me, "Oh, sleep paralysis, yeah."
Did you tell him that the story about you experiencing it before you found out what it was, or
Yeah, so the context for the story is kind of funny. I was at this theater
Yeah.
experience vibe thing,
Mhm.
and we were just talking, and the night before I'd had my experience, and basically what sleep paralysis is, to answer your question, is you're asleep but you're half awake and you have the sensation of being paralyzed. So
how can you be asleep and half awake at the same time?
right, yeah, it doesn't sound normal.
No.
It sounds kind of oxymoronic in that way, but essentially it's the it's there's a lot of history with it. I looked it up, and
Tell us your story. What was your experience?
so it depends. I think a lot of it comes from stress. My biggest experience that I had, and the one that I actually wrote for on the blog, was it happened just before my final exams, and it was quite a long one. Usually they don't last for more than 2 minutes. It still feels like a long 2 minutes, though. You definitely feel like you're never gonna leave this state, this physical
Wow,
state.
that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's free. It's horrible. My first one, right? Just to quickly give some idea.
Yeah.
My first one actually happened when I was about 8 years old. I was sleeping.
You were 8 years old and you got sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I couldn't move. I was like, why can't I move? You know, I'm staring at my brother, who's opposite me on the other side of the room.
Right.
He's in another bed, and I can't move.
You couldn't move.
No, I couldn't. I tried everything. My eyes were moving, but my mouth wasn't. I wanted to scream. I couldn't do it.
Whoa.
So that's the general idea of sleep paralysis, for me anyway. A lot of people associate it with the devil. It's essentially...
The devil.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely the devil.
Right. Because you do have a sensation that sometimes you apparently what they say is that it's a feeling that someone is looking at you or staring at you, a shadow, an entity that's in the room. That honestly was never the case for me. It was just a case of I couldn't move.
Yeah.
I couldn't actually I was observing everything happen around me, but I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't communicate it. But the biggest experience that I had, and actually the most terrifying, was before my final year of the International Baccalaureate, my final exams in Geneva, actually.
Yeah.
I couldn't move for about an hour.
An hour?
Yeah. And it
so
was...
what did you do?
Well, I couldn't do anything.
What was going through your head in that moment?
I thought I was more or less accustomed to it at this point. These things happen sporadically. I haven't had one actually in about a year now. So,
Wow.
But at that point, I hadn't had one in a long time either. So it was a bit of a shock. But what was different about this time, you see, Sando, it was the sensation that I wasn't in my room. I was on my bed, but I wasn't in my room.
Whoa.
I was.
Where were you?
I was hallucinating. It was a white room, and there was this spirit type thing. As crazy as that sounds, you know,
the devil.
Yeah, let's call it the devil. And I started to force my eyes to close, and when they did, I started to move, and I started to come out of my bed, and I started to follow the person.
Whoa.
And the devil opened the door to this room that I'd never been in, and I followed him out, and I tried to speak, but I couldn't. I tried to look at him, and I couldn't. It was all fuzzy. You know when you're in a dream and you try to look at people, you can't actually. It's just images that your brain tells you you're seeing, but actually you're not actually seeing in any detail. You can't actually say what the color of their skin was, what color of their eyes, or how they actually sounded like. It's just these, you know, our brain is so complex. It gives you so much sensation and sensory experiences that you can't really explain. But yeah, it was a long one. It was a very long one. It felt like I'd been gone for like 5 hours. It was only an hour, but an hour for me felt
was
like
a long time.
A very long time.
I'm sure. So how could you finally tell the difference between you being tripping and moving around to staying in your bed in one place?
Well,
How did you know that you were awake or asleep?
basically, it was just it was weird because I'd never had a sleep paralysis that became a dream. Usually, a sleep paralysis for me lasts 4 minutes, 5 minutes,
Right.
10 minutes at most, and so for this time, it was very strange. And finally, when I was able to break out of it, it was because I had closed my eyes and I'd let myself just go.
Yeah.
The instinct, obviously, is to fight. You want to move. You want to do this. But the actual technique that I had learned, and I should have done at this point, was to breathe slowly, relax, and just count down from 3. And that's a technique that I use a lot.
And it works.
It works, yeah. You count down in your mind. You say 3, 2, 1, boom, and you force your eyes open. You have more energy, and you find the way to get out of it.
Right.
But yeah, that was probably the worst experience. And I wrote about that in my blog, and it actually became one of the more popular articles that I wrote.
Cool.
There's a very, very disturbing image that I posted with the blog, done by an Italian artist, that depicts a lady sleeping and this devil or satanic creature sitting on the edge of her bed. I forgot the name of the artist, but essentially it captures the moment quite well. But it was very strange. I don't really know if it is sleep paralysis. It feels like it, but from what I've read, it seems like people have the sensation of being
Seems
washed.
like it. Yeah.
And that for sure was a sleep paralysis attack regarding those terms. But
Right.
But yeah,
It's weird how we all react to stress in different ways.
yeah, definitely. And it doesn't seem to run on my father's side. My father doesn't know much about it.
Yeah.
But it definitely runs on my mum's side. My grandfather,
interesting.
my Colombian grandfather, he actually emailed me when he read this thing, and he told me,
Yeah.
this is actually quite a normal thing. I've had this a lot, and what you should do is, just let yourself go, engage, just use it for something, see it as something positive rather than something negative, and
Right.
it's good advice. It worked. It worked for me before he told me, but it was cool to see that it was actually a real, legitimate
Right.
technique to kind of
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Yeah, I think it really is just out of stress or a need to be somewhere where you shouldn't be or something like that. When you're just thinking about too much and you don't get enough sleep.
Right. There's too much chaos going around in your mind, and
Yeah.
it just stops you.
Yeah.
Damn.
My theory with it is that you're not actually sleeping. It's in that small interval just before you wake up.
Oh.
You've got your eye because your eyes are watching and observing things, and you're seeing everything happen.
But your body still thinks it's asleep.
Exactly. So I think it's that small interval just before you wake up. So for me anyway, when I experience that, it's actually just me taking a bit longer to wake up.
Right.
But yeah, it's it is what it is, and I think a lot of people experience it in much worse ways than I do. So I can't really complain about it too much.
Wow, that's super interesting. I'm sure there are people out there that can relate. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. It's very
Right.
interesting. There's a lot of theories about it. Is it God communicating to us? Are you transporting to a different dimension? All of that stuff. But
Yeah, I'm
it's cool.
sure there.
It does feel like it. It does feel like you're
Yeah.
going somewhere. It feels like you're on some type of drug that's
Wow.
taking you places. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's very cool. So you're interested in politics too, yeah?
Very interested. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. What about politics?
Well, I've always been exposed to a political family. My family's been very politically oriented from the day I was born. Really, I mean, not since the day I was born, but it's always been like that. They've always been very engaged, and yeah, it's been a real privilege actually, because a lot of my family have had the advantage of getting higher education, and my father especially, his job is political, and
He's an ambassador of some sort, right?
yeah, he was ambassador. He now works back in New Zealand for the foreign ministry.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
he's a huge inspiration to everyone down there. And yeah, it was something I understood, something that came easy to me, I think, because of my exposure to it from a young age. And I thought, I'm really enjoying this. It's very interesting to follow, to discuss about it, to debate about it, and also I was just curious. You know, I wanted to know how the world worked. I wanted to know why is it that people care about this so much? Why is it that a prime minister or a president has a big role to play? And
Yeah.
the history as well is what I love. I was a huge fan of history, actually. But the history that I was interested in was political history, and that gave me a huge source of inspiration to actually do politics. The theory of it, anyway, the theoretical aspects of it. So I'm a huge fan of it, and obviously, one of the reasons why I started this was because of the huge political events at the time, which was the Trump election and Brexit.
Right. Yeah. Very, very world shaping moments.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.